With a cold heart, my son signed the consent form to take me off life support. The doctor had said I still had a chance. When I suddenly awoke, the moment I opened my eyes, I whispered a single sentence that made the doctor turn pale and immediately call the police. Before the story begins, please drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe so this channel can grow and bring you even more compelling stories. Darkness. That was all I could see as far as my eyes could reach, or more accurately, as far as my consciousness could grasp. It felt like sinking to the bottom of the deepest ocean, a place where sunlight never touches. My body felt impossibly heavy, as if a 1,000-ton slab of concrete was crushing my chest, my legs, my arms. I wanted to move. I wanted to scream. But not a single muscle in my body would obey my brain's command. I was trapped, imprisoned within my own flesh. However, my sense of hearing was extraordinarily sharp, far sharper than when I was fully conscious. I could hear the hum of the ventilator pumping air into my lungs with a monotonous, terrifying rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. The sound of the heart monitor became the only sign that I was still alive, that my soul had not yet abandoned this powerless body. How is she, Dr. Parker? That voice. My blood boiled the instant I heard it. It was Clark, my son. His tone was so sad, so fragile, as if he were the most suffering son in the world about to lose his beloved mother. But I knew exactly what kind of demonic grin he was likely hiding behind that pitiful facade. Her vitals are stable, Mr. Clark, though your mother is still in a coma, Dr. Parker replied. I could picture the frown on his forehead as he checked the charts on the monitor. As I mentioned yesterday, there's a window to perform a decompressive craniotomy to relieve the pressure on her brain. Her pupillary response is still present, though weak. That's hope, said Clark. I wanted to scream, yes, do the surgery. Dr. Parker, help me. But my tongue was useless. My throat felt like it was stuffed with thick cotton. I screamed with all my might inside my head, but no sound escaped. Only torturous silence. Surgery. Clark let out a long sigh. A sigh that sounded so fabricated to my ears. Dr. Parker, we've been over this. My mother has suffered enough. I can't bear to see her head cut open again, with tubes stuck in her here and there. Is there a 100% guarantee she'll return to normal? In medicine, there's no such thing as a 100% guarantee, Clark. But without the surgery, the risk is fatal. We're racing against the clock, Dr. Parker urged. I could hear the frustration in his voice. Dr. Parker was a brilliant doctor. He knew I could be saved. He knew I was a fighter. No, document Clark cut in quickly. His voice turned a fraction colder, but he immediately masked it with a fake sob. I know my mother. She's a perfectionist. She would never want to live as a vegetable, burdening others for the rest of her life. Besides, in our family, we believe we have to respect God's will. If it's her time to go, I have to let her go. Liar! I shrieked in my mind. You're just afraid I'll wake up and expose everything. Clark, you're terrified. I'll tell the police that you were the one who pushed me down the stairs. You're afraid your gambling debts will be exposed. I remembered the incident with perfect clarity, as if it had happened 5 minutes ago. A torrential rain was hammering Chicago that night, just like the rain I could now faintly hear tapping against my hospital room window. We had a massive fight on the second floor of my luxurious Lincoln Parker brownstone. I had just found suspicious bank statements. The money in his daughter's college fund I set up years ago was gone. Tens of thousands of dollars vanished overnight. When I confronted him, Clark, who always appeared dapper and gentle in public, transformed into a monster. His handsome face, the one people always praised as the ideal son, turned crimson with rage. He was no longer the Clark I knew. He was a cornered addict. Stay out of my business, Naomi. You're just my mother. Your job is to take care of me. He had snarled. That's little Lily's future. Clark, what did you use it for? Sports betting again. Your crypto scams, Dot. I screamed back. He didn't answer with words, but with a hard shove. I lost my balance. My body was airborne for a second before my back slammed against the steps, and my head hit the cold marble with a sickening crack. The last thing I remembered before darkness swallowed me was Clark standing at the top of the stairs, looking down at me, not with remorse, but with a calculating stare. He didn't rush to help me. He stood there waiting, making sure I wasn't still breathing. And now he was standing by my bedside playing the part of the grieving son. Clark, I'm begging you, reconsider. As Naomi's colleague, I know she's a strong woman. She would want to fight. Dr. Parker pleaded again. I could feel his warm hand touch my wrist, checking my pulse. The touch gave me a small comfort in the midst of this cold despair. Enough, doctor. Clark's voice rose, then dropped again, as if reining in his emotions. I'm her son. I have the right to decide. I've already discussed it with my mother, and we agree. We don't want her to suffer any longer. Please respect our family's decision. Just pull the plug. Pull the plug. The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. He wanted to murder me legally. He wanted to finish what he failed to do on those stairs. I sensed another person in the room, a cloying perfume. The scent of gardenia is far too strong. It was his wife, Maya. Doctor. Maya's voice was sharp and piercing. My husband is right. This is Naomi's fate. Perhaps this is a warning because she was too busy with her career, forgetting her duties as a mother. Don't prolong my husband's suffering, having to go back and forth to the hospital to watch over a mother who is already a lost cause. Just let her go. My heart shattered into a million pieces. Not just my son, but my daughter-in-law also wanted me dead. They were conspiring. In their eyes, I wasn't a person. I was a walking ATM that was now broken and needed to be thrown away. Very well. Dr. Parker's voice sounded defeated. My heart sank. If that's the family's final decision, and you've signed the DNR and refusal of medical intervention forms, we can't force the surgery. We will proceed with extubation, removing the breathing tube as per your request. When can it be done? Clark asked. There was a hint of impatience in his voice. He was in a hurry. We can prepare for it now. Nurse Jenny will get the procedure ready. Dr. Parker answered quietly. No, not now. God, please help me. I don't want to die. I have to save Lily. I have to save my assets from these leeches. I have to tell the world who Clark really is. I summoned every ounce of my strength. I focused on the tip of my toe, on my eyelid, on anything that could possibly move. Move, Naomi, move. I commanded my own body, but nothing. My body remained still, a lifeless piece of meat. A coldness crept up from my feet. Not the cold of the room, but the cold fear of impending death. I heard footsteps approach. The smell of Clark's expensive cologne, mixed with the faint scent of stale cigarette smoke, was near my face. He leaned down, bringing his lips to my ear. Sorry, Mom. He whispered so softly, I was sure Dr. Parker and Nurse Jenny couldn't hear. When you're gone, your insurance policy pays off all my debts. You're finally useful. Those words set my soul on fire. An incredible rage exploded in my chest. Hotter than fire, stronger than fear. He wanted to kill me for insurance money. He called me useful only when I was dead. Bastard. That fury triggered something in my brain. Adrenaline flooded my dormant nervous system. My heart began to race. Beep, 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 beep. My heart monitor started beeping faster and faster. Doctor, the patient's heart rate is spiking. Nurse Jenny exclaimed. Naomi, Dr. Parker called out. In that darkness, I fought. I clawed at the walls of this paralysis with the nails of my rage. I will not die today. Not at the hands of this boy. The accelerating heart monitor became the soundtrack to my struggle. Beep, 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 beep. Its rhythm was chaotic, matching the explosive turmoil in my chest. I was no longer a passive patient. I was a cornered tigress, ready to pounce on anyone who threatened her life. What's wrong with it? Why is it making that sound? Clark's voice was panicked. Not panicked with worry, but with fear. He was afraid his plan was unraveling at the last second. It's a sympathetic response, Dr. Parker explained, his voice moving closer. I felt his hand checking my eyelids, shining a pen light into my pupils. A blinding light pierced the darkness. It was painful, but it was also hope. There's a sudden surge in brain activity. Naomi might be feeling pain or a strong emotion. What emotion? She's in a coma, Maya snapped. Her voice was shrill with displeasure. Come on, document, don't give us false hope. Just pull it now so she can be at peace. We can't perform the procedure when the patient is unstable, ma'am. Nurse Jenny stated firmly. Jenny, thank you for defending me. I focused all my remaining energy on one point, my eyes. My eyelids felt as heavy as iron, sealed shut with an invisible superglue. But I didn't care. The hatred for Clark and Maya was a fuel far more potent than any stimulant. I pictured Lily's face, my little girl who still needed her grandmother. If I died now, Lily would be raised by these monsters. Clark would blow through my inheritance on gambling, and Lily would be neglected. No, that couldn't happen. Open your eyes, Naomi. With a single ragged breath that felt like it was tearing my chest apart, I forced my eyelid muscles to work. Slowly, the white light of the ICU room began to filter in, blurry, blinding. Everything was a hazy, unfocused shape. Doctor, look! Nurse Jenny cried out. I blinked once, twice. The shapes in front of me began to sharpen. A face. Dr. Parker's worried face was directly above mine. Behind him stood Jenny, her hand over her mouth, her eyes welling up with tears. And in the corner, I saw them, Clark and Maya. Clark's face turned ashen instantly, white as a sheet. His eyes widened as if he were seeing a ghost rising from the grave. He took an unconscious step back, bumping into the four-pole and making it sway. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out. The grieving sun mask he had been wearing shattered, replaced by an expression of pure horror. He knew I had heard his final whisper. Maya was frozen, her hands clutching her expensive leather handbag. The young woman's face tensed, her lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line. Naomi, can you hear me? Dr. Parker asked, his voice trembling with emotion. He leaned closer. I tried to answer, but my throat was parched. The ventilator tube was lodged in my mouth, making me want to gag. It was painful. I could only manage a weak groan. Easy, Naomi. Easy. You're still on the ventilator. Don't fight the machine. He instructed gently. He looked at Jenny. Prepare for ventilator weaning. She's fully conscious. We'll try to extubate now if her spontaneous breathing is adequate. Clark suddenly stepped forward, trying to regain control despite the fear etched on his face. Wait, doctor, is she really conscious, or is this just a reflex before she passes? You know, they say there's a final rally before the end, right? How vile you are, Clark. Even as I open my eyes, you still hope for my death. Dr. Parker turned to Clark with a sharp glare I had never seen before. Mr. Henderson, your mother opened her eyes and made direct, purposeful eye contact. This is not a reflex. This is consciousness. The process of removing the ventilator tube was agonizing, It felt like a long snake being pulled from deep inside my lungs. I coughed violently, my chest burning. Tears streamed from the corners of my eyes. Nurse Jenny deftly cleared the mucus from my mouth and fitted an oxygen mask over my face. "Breathe, Naomi." Slowly, she guided. I greedily inhaled the pure oxygen. My lungs ached, but that pain was proof that I was alive. I stared hard at Clark, a look that sent a clear message. The war has just begun. Clark looked restless. He fumbled in his pants pocket, perhaps for his phone or cigarettes, or just for an escape. "Mom, thank God you're awake," he said, his voice sounding completely off-key. He tried to approach and take my hand. I weakly jerked my hand away, rejecting his touch. Disgusting. His skin felt like poison. "Mom," Clark looked startled by my rejection. I looked at Dr. Parker. I had to tell him now before Clark had a chance to manipulate the situation or hurt me again when no one was around. My voice was a hoarse whisper, barely audible, like sandpaper on wood. "Doctor," I managed to call out. He immediately brought his ear close to my lips. "Yes, Naomi, take your time. What hurts?" I gathered my last bit of breath. I glanced at Clark, who was watching me wearily. He was leaning in, trying to eavesdrop. "Keep him away," I hissed, flicking my eyes toward Clark. Dr. Parker understood. He held up a hand, signaling for Clark to back off. "Please give us some space, Mr. Henderson." Clark retreated reluctantly, his eyes never leaving me. Cold sweat began to bead on his temples. I grabbed the collar of Dr. Parker's scrubs, forcing him even closer, so close that only he could hear my whisper. This was the key to Clark's downfall. This was my real-life insurance policy. "Phone," I whispered, my voice breaking in locker 303, the residence lounge. Dr. Parker frowned, confused, but listening intently. "The code." I swallowed hard. My throat was raw. His father's death date. I glanced at Clark. Clark didn't know his own father's death date because he didn't care. But he used that date as his ATM pin because it was the only date he'd ever bothered to record from his father's old journal. The day he got his first inheritance. Ironic. Dr. Parr froze. He slowly pulled his face back and looked deep into my eyes. He saw the seriousness and the fear there. He was a neurosurgeon. He was brilliant. He immediately understood that this was not the rambling of a post-coma patient. This was a distress signal. His face, which had been full of medical concern, turned pale. He realized the implications of what I had said. A hidden phone, a secret code, a patient's terror of her own son. Dr. Parker straightened up, trying to remain professional, though his hands trembled slightly. He looked at Clark, his gaze now filled with suspicion. "Nurse Jenny," he called, his voice deliberately flat. "Please watch over Mrs. Henderson. Don't let anyone near her, including family, without my permission. I need to get a special medication from the pharmacy for a moment." "But Doc, I'm her son," Clark protested, his tone rising with panic. His criminal instincts were sensing danger. "Post-coma observation protocol. Mr. Henderson, the patient needs absolute quiet or she could have a seizure." Dr. Parker lied smoothly. He patted Jenny's shoulder, giving her a look that only two people who had worked together for years could understand. "Protect her." He turned and walked quickly out of the ICU room. I saw him reach into the pocket of his white coat, pulling out his own cell phone. His fingers danced across the screen. He wasn't calling the pharmacy. I knew he was calling someone far more important right now, the police. Clark watched Dr. Parker leave with unease. Then his eyes returned to me. That look was no longer one of love or grief, but the look of a predator realizing its prey has just escaped its jaws. And now the hunter has become the hunted. I managed a faint smile behind my oxygen mask. "You're finished, Clark." The atmosphere in the room grew quiet, but it was not a peaceful silence. It was the heavy charged stillness before a storm, as thick as the air under dark clouds before lightning strikes. After Dr. Parker's back disappeared through the door, the tension in the room multiplied. I was still lying weak, half my life seemingly dragged back from the grave, while the other half fought to stay grounded in the real world. Nurse Jenny stood guard by my bed, her posture defensive. She wasn't just a nurse to me right now. She was the last fortress protecting me from the two predators standing near the foot of my bed, Clark and his wife Maya. Yes, Maya was Clark's wife, the woman who had married him for my money and made Clark to worship material wealth. They both stared at me, Clark with a restlessness he couldn't hide, his foot tapping an anxious, irritating rhythm on the hospital's vinyl floor. His eyes darted around the room, occasionally glancing toward the door where Dr. Parker had left, then back to me with an unreadable expression, a mix of fear and deep-seated hatred. "What's taking Dr. Parker so long?" Clark grumbled, breaking the silence. His voice sounded hoarse. He glanced at his fake Rolex, a high-end replica he used to impress his business clients. "He just went to the pharmacy. Should have been 5 minutes. The central pharmacy might be busy, sir." There were a lot of accident victims from the storm outside. Nurse Jenny answered calmly, though I could see her hands were clenched into tight fists at her sides. Jenny knew something was wrong. Jenny knew the doctor hadn't gone to the pharmacy. I tried to regulate my breathing behind the oxygen mask. Every inhale felt like sucking in razor blades, sharp and painful, but the pain kept me conscious. My mind drifted to the phone, an old beat-up burner phone I had hidden 3 months ago. I had already sensed Clark's rotten behavior back then. Money in the account started disappearing. I had bought that used phone from a small shop on the outskirts of Chicago using cash, so it couldn't be traced. That's where I stored everything I took secretly, and a video of Clark's confession when he was drunk. A video where he bragged about his insurance plan. I hid it in locker 303, a locker in the old, rarely used residence lounge because the lock was jammed and it was in a damp corner. Only I knew how to open it with a specific jolt. "I'm stepping out for a minute," Clark said suddenly, walking toward the door. My heart felt like it stopped. Did he know? Could he guess? Clark was cunning. His criminal instincts were sharp. If he followed Michael and found he wasn't at the pharmacy, he would know I had leaked something. He could become desperate. "I'm sorry, Mr. Henderson." Jenny's voice was sharp, halting Clark in his tracks. "Dr. Parker instructed that you remain here. We may need immediate family consent if Mrs. Henderson's condition declines again." Clark turned, his face flushed red. "I need a smoke. I'm stressed seeing my mother like this. Who are you to stop me?" "You're just a nurse." "I'm following the orders of the attending physician," Jenny retorted, equally fierce. "And they're sterilizing the corridor right now due to an infectious patient transfer. You can't go out for the next 10 minutes. A lie. Jenny was lying to hold him here. I wanted to thank her, but I could only blink weakly. Maya snorted. She walked closer to my bed. The cloying scent of her gardenia perfume made my stomach turn. She looked down at me with a condescending glare as if I were dirt on her expensive shoes. "You see what you've done, Naomi?" she hissed, her voice low, but clear enough for me to hear. "You're inconveniencing everyone. If you were a good mother, you wouldn't be putting your son through this stress. You should have just died peacefully." Tears of rage welled in the corners of my eyes. This woman, she knew how depraved her husband was, but she turned a blind eye for the monthly allowance Clark gave her money he had stolen from my savings. Suddenly, Clark seemed to realize something. His eyes widened. He looked at me, then at the door. His face turned deathly pale. Maybe he remembered the time I caught him rummaging through my purse looking for evidence. Maybe he realized my whisper wasn't just a complaint of pain. Move. Clark shoved Jenny's shoulder forcefully, causing her friend to stumble into a medicine cart. The clash of metal broke the tension. Sir, don't get physical, Jenny shouted. You're hiding something, Clark yelled, his panic peaking. He no longer cared about the grieving son act. Parker isn't at the pharmacy, is he? What did you tell him, Mom? What? Clark lunged toward me, his large hands gripping the bed rail. His enraged face was just inches from mine. The smell of cigarettes and cold sweat emanated from him. I saw the murderer in his eyes. He wanted to choke me. He wanted to silence me forever before the police arrived. Answer me, he roared, shaking the bed rail. My heart monitor shrieked as my heart rate skyrocketed. Beep, 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 beep. Security. Jenny screamed at the top of her lungs, pressing the emergency button on the wall. Clark panicked. He knew his time was up. He let go of the bed rail and ran for the exit. He had to stop whatever Dr. Parker was doing. He had to erase the evidence. But as the automatic door slid open, Clark's escape came to an abrupt halt. In the doorway, 2 burly security guards were already blocking the path. And behind them, out of breath, but with a triumphant look on his face, stood Dr. Michael Parker. In his hand, he held an object that made Clark's knees buckle instantly. An old black burner phone with a cracked screen. My Pandora's box. The storm outside seemed to be raging, furiously beating against the ICU window in rhythm, with the tempest now erupting inside the room. A flash of lightning illuminated Clark's face, now as white as paper. He took a step back, his legs unsteady as if his bones had been ripped from his body. Dr. Parker walked in, followed by 2 men in plain clothes whose aura of authority was unmistakable. Detectives. He didn't look at Clark. He walked straight to me and placed the old phone on the bedside table, as if presenting a trophy. The phone was sealed in a clear plastic evidence bag. What is the meaning of this? Maya's voice screeched, breaking the tense silence. She tried to maintain her arrogance, though her eyes betrayed her panic. Why are you stopping my husband? And what is that piece of junk? One of the detectives, a middle-aged man in a rain-dampened brown leather jacket, stepped forward. Detective Miller. Mr. Clark Henderson. Detective Miller's voice was deep and firm. We've received a report of suspected attempted murder and domestic violence. We need you to remain where you are. Slander, Clark shouted, his voice cracking. This is all my mother's doing. She's crazy, officer. She's hallucinating from the coma. The drugs have damaged her brain. Dr. Park looked at Clark coldly. Naomi's brain is functioning perfectly fine. Clark, fine enough to remember the passcode for this phone. Dr. Park picked up the phone, still in its plastic sleeve, and turned it on. The screen glowed dimly, displaying a password field. The date your father died, he said flatly. Clark was silent. He swallowed hard. It was his little secret. Dr. Park typed in the numbers. The 5th of April, 2018. Click. The phone unlocked. The small beep of the unlocking sound was like a bomb detonating in Clark's ears. Dr. Park tapped the screen a few times, opened a folder named Evidence, and connected the phone to a small portable speaker he had brought with him. Let's have a listen, he said. The video file played. There was a rustling sound, and then Clark's voice, clear and venomous, filled the ICU. The small phone screen was aimed so the detectives could see. It was the video I had secretly recorded from a crack in the closet while Clark was on the phone with someone, likely his bookie. In the video, Clark was pacing, his face furious. Don't worry, man. My mother is taken care of. The stairs in our house get slippery when wet. A little push. A domestic accident. The cops will never suspect a thing. The payout comes through next week. I promise. The video ended. Silence. Only the steady beep of my heart monitor served as a silent witness to the downfall of a monster. Detective Miller signaled to his partner. Cuff him. Wait. No. Maya. Help me, Clark. Clark screamed hysterically as the officers moved in on him. He struggled, kicking like a child, throwing a tantrum. This is a misunderstanding. Mom's the crazy one. She fell on her own. You have the right to remain silent, the officer said, twisting Clark's arm behind his back. The metallic click of the handcuffs locking around his wrists was more beautiful than any symphony I had ever heard. Clark was dragged past my bed. His eyes met mine. There was no arrogance left, only pure terror. I stared straight at him. Then, with what little strength I had, I slowly raised my right hand. My fingers moved weakly, pointing toward the door. Get out. You're a demon, Naomi. A demon. Clark shrieked as he was hauled out the door. His voice echoed down the hospital corridor before finally fading away. Maya was still standing frozen. She looked at me, then at the door, where her husband had been taken without saying a word, no apology, no remorse. She turned and walked briskly out of the room, the sound of her heels clicking with an arrogant yet empty sound. She chose to save her own reputation rather than defend the husband, who had just been exposed as a criminal. My body suddenly felt limp. The adrenaline that had sustained me vanished, replaced by an overwhelming exhaustion. My vision started to blur again, but this time it wasn't from the coma. It's over, Naomi. It's over. Dr. Parker's gentle voice was in my ear. He held my hand tightly. You're safe now. Clark can't touch you anymore. Nurse Jenny was shocked. I wanted to smile, but my facial muscles were too tired. I just closed my eyes, letting tears roll onto the pillow. The rain outside was still pouring, but the storm inside my life had just subsided. Still, I knew this wasn't really over. The storm of public opinion was about to begin, but at least for tonight, I was alive. I had won. The echo of Clark's scream, calling me a demon, slowly faded down the long, cold hospital corridor, but its vibration remained in the air, hanging like toxic smoke in the now silent ICU room. His departure, dragged away by police in handcuffs, should have brought me immense relief. I should have felt free, but what I felt instead was a painful emptiness, as if my own bones had been forcibly ripped out along with the man I once considered the final harbor of my life. My body finally gave up. The adrenaline that had burned through my blood, forcing me to stay conscious and fight, was now extinguished. The monitor beside me began to beep with a warning tone again, not because my heart had stopped, but because its rhythm had become weak and erratic. Naomi, stay with me. Naomi. Dr. Parker's voice sounded distant, as if calling from the end of a tunnel. I felt medical hands working quickly on my body. Nurse Jenny injected something into my foreline. A cold sensation spread through my vein and slowly through my body, bringing a heavy drowsiness with it, but I refused to close my eyes. One thing was not yet finished. One more life was at stake in this deadly chess game. Lily, I whispered, my voice barely audible under the oxygen mask that had been placed back over my face. Where's my granddaughter? Dr. Parker, who was checking my pupillary response, paused. His tense face softened. He held my hand, not as a doctor, but as someone who understood a mother's greatest fear. Lily's safe, Elle. She's at the reception now with the hospital's social worker. Dr. Parker answered gently. Tears streamed from the corners of my eyes, soaking the pillow. Thank God Lily was safe. Clark couldn't use her as a pawn. That monster couldn't touch my little granddaughter. Detective Miller, the officer who had arrested Clark, approached the bed. He seemed awkward in the midst of the intense medical situation, but his duty demanded resolve. He held the plastic bag containing the burner phone, The only weapon I had. Mrs. Henderson, Detective Miller said respectfully, I know you need to rest, but I need a brief verbal confirmation to officially secure this evidence. Is it correct that this phone is yours and contains evidence of threats made by Mr. Henderson, your son? I nodded weakly. Yes, that's the proof. Understood. We'll process it immediately. Mr. Henderson will be detained tonight on charges of attempted murder and aggravated domestic battery. Please get some rest. A full statement can be taken once your condition improves. After the detective left, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was no longer one of criminal tension, but the emotional wreckage left by the storm. Nurse Jenny was straightening my blanket with trembling hands. News of Clark's arrest spread like wildfire. Even in my semi-conscious state, I could feel the change in the gazes of the night shift nurses who came in to check my for. There were looks of pity, of shock, and whispers I accidentally caught when the door was slightly ajar. Crazy, right? Mrs. Henderson's son. He was so handsome. Always bought us coffee. Heard he had hundreds of thousands in debt. Sports betting. A wave of shame washed over me. For years, I had cultivated an image as a successful businesswoman, a career woman with a harmonious family. I covered every bruise with thick foundation and long-sleeved blouses. I covered every one of Clark's debts with my salary and bonuses. I built a beautiful sand castle so people wouldn't see the hell I was actually living in. And tonight, that sand castle had been washed away by a brutal wave of truth. Everyone now knew Mrs. Henderson wasn't a perfect woman. She was a battered victim. Dr. Parker called again. He stood by my bed, looking at me with a deep intensity. The rain outside had softened to a drizzle, tapping a slow rhythm against the window. You don't need to think about what people are saying. Just focus on recovering. We still have a long road ahead. Clark and his wife won't stay quiet. I looked at Dr. Parker. The lines of exhaustion were clear on his face. He had risked his career tonight, lying about going to the pharmacy, calling the police outside of the hospital's rigid bureaucracy, and helping Lily. He did it all for me. Thank you, I said sincerely. He offered a small smile. Sleep, Naomi. Tomorrow is a new day, and this time you're not alone. The sedative finally won. My consciousness was pulled gently into a dark but peaceful dream world. No more pain. No more of Clark's screams, just quiet darkness. For the first time in 3 days, I slept not because I was in a coma from blunt force trauma, but because my body knew the threat was gone. But deep down, my instincts whispered that this was only the end of the first act. The real war, the war against public opinion and legal maneuvering, was just about to begin. 2 weeks had passed since that night. I had been moved from the ICU to a private suite in the VIP wing. My body was recovering with surprising speed, at least physically. The bruises had faded to a yellowish tint, and the stitches on my head had healed, but the invisible wounds were fiercely inflamed. That morning, the harsh Chicago sun pierced the blinds of my hospital room. It should have been a bright day, but my mood was dark and heavy. On my lap was a tablet Nurse Jenny had brought reluctantly from my bag. She had refused at first, but I insisted. I needed to know what was happening out there. I couldn't fight this war blind, and what I saw on that screen made my blood boil. A viral video was circulating on social media with millions of views. The thumbnail featured the face of Maya, Clark's wife, sobbing her heart out against the backdrop of our luxurious home, a home bought with my sweat and tears. The title was provocative, A Wife's Heartbreak, Wealthy Businesswoman Frames Son. My hand trembled as I pressed play. In the video, Maya was dressed simply, a stark contrast to her usual glamorous style, and wore no makeup to appear more miserable. My husband Clark is a very patient man. Maya sobbed for the camera, dabbing at her crocodile tears with a tissue. It's true. He was laid off and wasn't working, but he always tried to make his mother and wife happy. And what did he get in return? Naomi, my mother-in-law. She was violent and abusive on him. When Clark confronted her, she flew into a rage and fell down the stairs in a hysterical fit. Now she's twisting the facts. She framed my husband. Oh God, where's the justice? The video was dramatically edited, complete with heart-wrenching, sad music. And the worst part was the comment section. Thousands of comments from strangers who knew nothing, judging me with words sharper than a scalpel. What an ungrateful woman. Has a caring and handsome son and still treat him violently. Of course, he was framed. I feel so bad for his wife. A wife's tears are sacred. That mother is going to get her karma. I threw the tablet to the end of the bed. My chest felt tight, not from my recovering lungs, but from the vicious slander that was now stripping me bare in front of the entire country. They didn't know who Clark was. They didn't know he blew my money on gambling. They only saw the drama. And Maya was a far more skilled actress than I was. She knew people were easily swayed by a woman's tears regardless of the facts. The door to my room opened. Dr. Parker walked in later to check how I was. He looked refreshed today, but his smile vanished when he saw the look on my face and the tablet lying askew on the bed. You watched it, he said flatly. It wasn't a question. How can I rest, doctor? My voice rose, tears of frustration spilling over. Look at what they're saying. That Clark is innocent. Maya is twisting everything. My reputation, it's ruined. He looked at me with sharp determination. Listen to me, Mrs. Henderson. This is a classic strategy, he said calmly. Clark's lawyer must have put Maya up to this. It's called trial by press. They know your legal evidence, the recordings, the video, the medical reports is solid. So they can't win in court. Their only move is to destroy you mentally with public opinion. They want you to get depressed and drop the charges or appear mentally unstable to the judge. But it hurts. They're insulting me. Let them bark. You have a fatal bite. Detective Miller came in. Mrs. Henderson, the forensic team just finished recovering data from Clark's laptop they seized from your house. You know what they found? A chat history between Clark and a woman named Cindy. She's Clark's actual mistress. And guess what? Cindy is 4 months pregnant. My world stopped spinning for a moment. Pregnant? My voice was choked. So besides the gambling, he was also cheating on his wife. Yes, the money you thought was lost to gambling, a large portion of it was funneled to Cindy's apartment in the West. Detective Miller continued. The police also found proof of transfers from Clark's account to an online bookie right on the day you fell. The motive is clear. He needed your life insurance money to cover his debts and support his pregnant mistress. The news hit me like a sledgehammer. But strangely, this time it didn't hurt. It was vindicating. This was ammunition. This was proof I wasn't crazy. Save this ace for the trial, Dr. Parks said. Let Maya run her mouth for now. The higher she flies on her lies, the harder she'll fall when we expose everything. Suddenly, the door opened again. This time, a small figure ran in with cheerful steps, instantly transforming the gloomy room. Grandma! Lily, my little girl! She leaped into my arms without hesitation, burying her face in my neck. The smell of her hair, the familiar scent of baby powder, instantly washed away the stench of medicine and online slander. I held her tight, so tight as if afraid she would disappear if I let go. I missed you, Grandma, she whined playfully. The nurse said you had a headache from working too much. Are you all better now? I looked into Lily's innocent round eyes. She didn't know anything about her father. She didn't know he had tried to kill her grandma, and I would do anything to protect that innocence for as long as possible. Granny's all better now, sweetie. Because you're here, I replied, kissing her forehead. Maya could have her thousands of netizens and paid trolls. Clark could have his slick lawyer, but I had the truth. I had Lily, and most importantly, I had a reason to live. I picked up my phone and called all the best lawyer I know. I'm not backing down. I'm going to drag them all through the hell they created for me. And as for that slander video, I glanced at the still glowing tablet. We won't respond now. We'll collect every single one of those vicious comments. I'm suing them all for libel after Clark is convicted. The storm of slander outside might still be raging, lightning striking my good name. But inside this room with my granddaughter, I felt calm. I was ready for court. I was ready to face those hypocrites. Clark thought he could destroy me. He was dead wrong. He had just created his worst enemy. The day of the trial arrived with a gray, oppressive atmosphere, as if the Chicago sky felt the heavy weight on my chest. The Cook County Courthouse stood imposing with its massive pillars swarmed by a sea of people. Since Maya's slander video went viral, my case was no longer just a domestic criminal matter. It had morphed into a public circus, a spectacle where morality was being debated in the court of public opinion. I sat in the back of my car, wringing my ice-cold hands. Outside, dozens of reporters with cameras at the ready had gathered like ants on sugar. Camera flashes went off like lightning strikes before my feet even touched the pavement. The moment the car door opened, chaos erupted. Microphones were aggressively shoved in my face, nearly hitting my nose. Mrs. Henderson, what's your response to the allegations from your daughter-in-law? Is it true the audio recording was an AI fake? The questions were like poisoned arrows, fired relentlessly. I kept my head down, hiding behind dark sunglasses, while two lawyers, Mr. Boren and his team, painstakingly carved a path through the crowd. Inside the courtroom, the air was thick and stuffy, a mixture of cheap perfume, sweat, and old paper. The room was packed. On the front right side, I saw the opposition. Maya sat there with her chin held high, dressed in all white with a long headscarf, a stage costume perfectly designed to elicit sympathy from the court. Her face was powdered with light makeup to make her look pale and sorrowful, as if she were the real victim here. And there, in the defendant's chair, sat Clark. He wore a conspicuous orange prison jumpsuit with the number 085 on his chest. His hair, usually styled neatly with expensive pomade, was messy, and he had dark circles under his eyes. Yet when our eyes met, I saw no remorse. I saw a flash of suppressed rage, an arrogance that hadn't been extinguished. He gave me a sharp look, then a thin, crooked smile, a smile that sent a terrifying message. You think you can win against me? All rise. The court is now in session. The bailiff's voice cut through the tension. 3 raps of the judge's gavel marked the beginning of the battle. The prosecuting attorney, a tough, middle-aged woman named Miss Wallace, read the indictment in a loud, clear voice. She detailed the chronology of the attempted murder with specifics that made my skin crawl. The push down the stairs, the neglect while I was in a coma, the attempt to remove my ventilator. But the real drama began when Clark's defense team took the floor. His lawyer was a Mr. Davies, a portly man with a booming voice and a reputation for doing anything to win, including twisting the facts. Your Honor, Mr. Davies's voice echoed off the courtroom walls as he paced confidently. My client, Mr. Clark Henderson, is the victim of a malicious scheme. His mother, the star witness Naomi Henderson, has a history of severe stress due to the pressures of her job. This inhuman workload led to depression, hallucinations, and self-harming tendencies. So she backed me violent and controlling. I clenched my fists in my lap. Lies, my mind screamed. The incident on the stairs, Mr. Davies continued, pointing dramatically at Clark, was a failed suicide attempt by Miss Henderson. My client tried to stop her, but was too late. And as for the ventilator, that was an act of love from a son who couldn't bear to see his mother suffer as a vegetable. But his good intentions were twisted. Then it was my turn to take the witness stand. My heart pounded as if it would leap out of my chest. I swore my oath on the Bible, my hand trembling violently. Mr. Davies immediately attacked me like a shark smelling blood. "Mrs. Henderson," he asked in a condescending tone, "is it true you often came home late at night?" "Yes, that's a demand of my profession," I answered firmly, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is it true that you are ashamed of your son because of his joblessness?" "Objection, Your Honor," Miss Wallace shouted. "Counsel's questions are speculative and are badgering the witness." "I'm merely exploring motive, Your Honor," Davies countered with a sly grin. I took a deep breath, looking straight at the judge. "Your Honor, I was never ashamed of a son who was struggling. I was ashamed of having a son who stole his own daughter's college fund to gamble and then tried to murder his mother when he was caught." Davies laughed mockingly. "Gambling? Where's the proof?" "That's just a baseless accusation." "We have the proof," Miss Wallace interjected calmly. "Your Honor, we request permission to play the legally obtained electronic evidence, an audio recording from the victim's phone just before the incident, hospital security footage, and forensic data from the defendant's laptop." Clark's previously calm face grew tense. He whispered frantically to Davies, but his lawyer could only stand silently as the judge approved the motion. The courtroom fell completely silent. This is a video the victim secretly recorded from a closet while the defendant was on the phone. The technician played the video file. The video played on a large projector screen. Clark was seen pacing in our bedroom, a cigarette dangling from his lips, his face furious. "Don't worry, man. My mother is taken care of. The stairs in our house get slippery when wet. A little push. Domestic accident. The cops will never suspect a thing. The payout comes through next week. I promise." Silence. There was a wave of murmurs. But our attack wasn't over. Miss Wallace had saved the final bomb to destroy Maya's credibility and the violent mother motive they had constructed. "Your Honor," Miss Wallace continued, "the data recovered from the defendant's laptop reveals evidence of bank transfers from the defendant's account to a Miss Cindy, as well as photographs of them together." The projector screen changed. A list of bank transfers appeared, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars over the last 6 months. Money I had worked day and night to earn. Money meant for Lily's future. And the final devastating blow was the last photo. Clark with his arm wrapped lovingly around a young woman in a lavish apartment. The woman wore a tight dress that accentuated her pregnant belly. Mr. Henderson used money extorted from his mother and planned to use her life insurance payout to finance another woman who is currently carrying his child from their illicit affair. Miss Wallace stated firmly. The courtroom erupted. "Son of a man in the back shouted, but the most chilling reaction came from Maya. Her face was ashen, as if all the blood had been drained from it. Her eyes widened, staring at the screen, then shifting to her husband with a look of utter disbelief. For Maya, money was God. To see money funneled to another woman was the ultimate betrayal. "Clark," Maya's voice trembled, cutting through the chaos. "Is this true? You said that money was for a mining business venture. You said Naomi was the one spending recklessly." Clark couldn't answer. He shrank further in his seat, his shoulders shaking. He knew he was finished. His mask's devoted husband had been smashed to pieces in front of his wife, the law, and the entire country. Mr. Davies wiped his face with a handkerchief, looking defeated. He knew the case was lost. "Enough!" Clark suddenly screamed, hysterically, his voice shattering like glass. He kicked the table in front of him, sending it toppling over. It's all because of her. Clark pointed a trembling finger at me, his eyes red and wet with tears of rage and desperation. She was stingy. She had a six-figure salary, but made her son beg like a charity case. Her money should have been my money. I was just taking what was mine. All my problems would be solved. My debts paid, Cindy taken care of, and I wouldn't have to listen to her nagging anymore. The words echoed through every corner of the room, recorded by every camera, heard by God. It was the most honest and most disgusting admission that could have come from his mouth. He didn't regret trying to kill me. He only regretted failing. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly to restore order. Security officers wrestled the rampaging Clark back into his chair. The rest of the trial was a blur to me. I could only weep silently, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming emotional release. 2 weeks later, the day of the verdict arrived. I stood as the judge read the decision in a deep, authoritative baritone. On the charges of attempted murder, aggravated domestic battery, and fraud, this court finds the defendant, Clark Henderson, guilty on all counts. Considering the lack of mitigating factors, as the defendant has shown no remorse and has instead defamed the victim. The judge paused, the entire room holding its breath. This court sentences the defendant to a term of 18 years in state prison. 18 years. The gavel came down once. Hard thwack. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard, more melodic than any symphony. Clark went limp as if the bones had been removed from his body. He slumped in his chair, his gaze empty. In the front row, Maya fainted and had to be carried out by relatives, a final tragic act from a greedy woman. As the guards led him away in handcuffs, Clark turned to look at me as we passed in the hallway. There was no more arrogance in his eyes, only a dark, hollow fear. He had lost everything, his freedom, his money, his mistress, who I later heard had fled with his remaining assets and his dignity. I stared back at him without pity, without fear. "Enjoy what you've sown, Clark," I whispered, just loud enough for him to hear. Clark was dragged away, disappearing behind the door to the holding cells. I stepped out of the courthouse. The sun was shining brilliantly, breaking through the gray clouds that had been hanging overhead. The polluted Chicago air felt fresh in my lungs. The storm had passed. The predator was caged, and I was free. Clark was gone. He was in Stateville Correctional Center, sleeping on a cold concrete floor, not this king-sized mattress. I exhaled a long, deep breath, feeling oxygen fill my lungs without the familiar tightness of fear. But a victory in court is not an instant cure. My physical wounds may have healed. The stitches on my head were gone, but the wounds in my soul were still wide open. For the first month, I often woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat, hearing footsteps on the stairs, or dreaming of being pushed into a dark abyss. I still felt like I was being watched. Healing is not linear. There were days I felt incredibly strong, like I could conquer the world. But there were other days I could only curl up under the covers, crying for no reason, feeling dirty and stupid for my only child. Why didn't I see it sooner? My first big step toward healing was leaving that luxurious house. The one that had been a silent witness to every slap, every insult, every tear. I sold it. I didn't care about the fake, happy memories that once existed there. I used the money from the sale to pay off the remaining debts Clark had taken out in my name, wiping the slate clean. With the rest, I bought a modest house in the quiet suburb of Evanston. My new home was much smaller, a single-story ranch with a large grassy yard and a maple tree out front. This house had peace for I and my granddaughter. Maya never challenges me over her. She ran away, maybe to another ma. The ranch walls held no memories of shouting. Its floors were never stained with my blood. It was a blank canvas. Here, I began to piece my life back together with Lily. Lily, my little girl, now 6 years old, was my biggest reason to keep going. The trauma had left its mark on her. She had become quiet and fearful of loud noises. But slowly, her cheerful laughter began to return. "Granny, look, a butterfly!" she shouted one morning, running barefoot across the lawn. Seeing her laugh so freely warmed my heart. We were safe now. If you've ever found yourself at a crossroads, surrounded by those who tried to break you, remember this: the strength to survive is already within you. It's not about how many times you fall, but about how many times you rise. Take a moment and reflect. What have you learned from your struggles? What has the storm taught you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're ready to embrace your own power, hit that subscribe button and share this message with someone who needs it. The world will always try to knock you down, but it's up to you to decide if you stay there. Naomi chose to rise, not for anyone else, but for herself and for the ones who depend on her. So ask yourself, when life tests you, will you stand tall or will you let the storm drown you?